But a flag's on the field, the ball's loose, and it's going back the other way! It was picked up, and it's taken in by DJ Hardy! Game over! Northside calls it!
Live from Orlando, Florida, you're listening to The Sports Scene with Jesse Ough.
Oh, step on a pineapple and call me Sally. Yep, it's me, Jesse Ough. Welcome, everyone, to The Sports Scene on iHeartRadio podcasts and YouTube, presented by First Bet and Sports Fluent Media. Different look, different layout. Everything's still the same, though, pretty much. I am joined by our resident fantasy football insider and our overall football knowledge person, both kicking a football with your feet and throwing the football, like with pigskin in the United States of America. But in this situation, we're talking about pigskin, obviously. Rahul Natarajan rejoins the sports scene now. Rahul, so good to have you with me. Thank you so much for stopping by. I was excited for this because we haven't talked to each other since right before the first week of the NFL season. Now, a lot has happened since then. A lot of fantasy things, a lot of, things with our team, the 49ers, and then also things around the league that we can pretty much get into today. But first, I want to know, what have you been up to in your Going for Two fantasy world? Have you still been doing your fantasy football podcast? What's going on there? Where can I find you? Let's start off with that.
Yeah, Jesse, dude, great to be back. Thank you for having me on. It's always a great time in the sports scene when we're... You know what? We did a lot better this year. Usually the advice is a little bit questionable. Looking back on some of our takes from pre-week one, we were hitting the nail on the head a little bit there. So props to us. But yeah, Jesse, we're talking right before the show how I've been swamped at my real job. God damn it! But
yes,
Going for Two, still trying to keep the podcast, the content stuff. Honestly, I fell into a rhythm of I was just making memes, bro, and somehow the memes were connecting to people. It's, I'm not going to give away the secret sauce in full, but there's just something so relatable about posting a TikTok about Mark Andrew, about how he hoed you on a critical matchup yet again, but
shafted me, bro. Absolutely shafted me.
It'll be great to talk about Mark Andrews, who's currently sitting higher in points scored than Sam Laporta, than what's his name, Dalton Kincaid. That just been, part of the craziness. I'm very glad too with the timing. So much to talk about, but it's a good time to talk about it after we've just finished week 7, heading into week 8. Half of the fantasy regular season, mostly go weeks 1 through 14. Half of the regular season's over, so I think it's a perfect time for us to take stock as what has happened, look at the fantasy trends, and see what may continue and help our listeners win those championships, no matter how they've done in the first 7 weeks.
Yeah, that's true. And what's crazy is that I actually think we got a lot of our original picks right, which is not something that we can say for ourselves in the past. Everything we said last year turned out to be absolutely a bust. We were busting everywhere. But, when it came to actually picking good picks this year for people, we are doing all right for ourselves. So I kind of want to take a look back with you over the first 8 weeks of play. Who have you liked? Who have you hated? And why?
Yeah. I mean, really just to get right into it, 2024 has been the year of the running back. And it just so...
Which is funny. That's maybe where we went wrong originally, because we did say, this is deep wide receiver draft.
Exactly.
You can find value in the 8th round in wide receivers. Nope. That is not the case.
It could not have been more opposite. It's not just like this was some inside track that you and me are on. The meta has been shifting year over year towards those wide receivers, not just the first round, but throughout the early rounds, as deep as round 8, you're probably let me take like the wide receiver 36 over the running back 24. That's how far the meta had shifted.
Yeah,
couldn't be more wrong in 2024. Let me give you a quick stat off the bat: half PPR scoring. And I had to sort it, I promise. But half PPR scoring, the running back 21 has scored 13 points per game. That would be equivalent to the wide receiver 13. So it just tells you the disparity in top end production and middle production, low production. Running backs are dominating all across the field. There are a lot of reasons we can look into this, but this obviously expands more than fantasy football. Fantasy football is just a fake game that we play on the platform of the NFL, and you have to look at the trends that we've seen league-wide, passing volume, scoring, all at outlier level lows, tight end usage at a 5+ year low. On the other hand,
defense is also being fantastic
yes.
this year, by the way. Like, if we're going to talk about anything, fantasy defenses and just defenses in general in the NFL have been dominating this year. It's like the NFL shifted. Remember how 2 years ago we had the Rams and the Chiefs had the highest scoring game of all time? It was like 72 to like 68 or something like that. And now we're having games end up 7-6, right?
Yeah. And defense is that last point. We don't see that in the fantasy, box score, but defense has been dominating. I think one stat that's very maybe all-encompassing is if you look at how the quarterback rating QBR against the blitz this year is, it's like a rating scale, but it's dropped from like a mid-70s average to 55 against the blitz, and that could be attributed to a lot of younger QBs, new OCs, but also more hip defensive coordinators. You're seeing like offensive coordinators get the bag. Now with like Mike McDonald becoming head coach and all these kinds of guys getting into bigger roles, Brian Flores over at Minnesota doing a great job. Just the way to bring the blitz, disguise those looks, it has been dominated. And that has just made it very interesting for then fantasy football, the game that we play based on the NFL. We have to adjust to how the NFL has been going these first 7 weeks.
And keep in mind, you mentioned that, this has been a running back year heavy, and we haven't even seen the best running back in the NFL yet in Christian McCaffrey.
The 101 in fantasy drafts.
Yeah.
When we last spoke, Christian McCaffrey was the consensus 101, and there was no question about it.
We also didn't know he had Achilles tendonitis in both of his legs.
Yeah.
So we both picked him. Obviously, we both picked him first in our mock draft together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's still out. Probably will not play until after the bye week. But there is a shining light at the end of the tunnel in that he might be brought back the week after, assuming all goes according to plan. Please, Lord. Assuming all goes according to plan as a 49ers fan, Christian McCaffrey is supposed to return after the Week 9 bye. So, once they start ramping him up, obviously you would assume that Jordan Mason's production is going to go down. Mm-hmm. But Jordan Mason is still a guy I think is worthy to keep on a roster. What do you think? Based on the way he's played the first 8 weeks.
Absolutely. You cannot drop this man You cannot drop this man from your roster, even when Christian McCaffrey. I'll still use if, but when Christian McCaffrey comes back, I don't believe it's going to be a situation where Mason takes enough touches to be startable, but who knows with McCaffrey, his comeback, he could get re-injured. It's just the nature of the position too, like taken away from the injuries McCaffrey's working back from. You cannot drop Jordan Mason from your rosters. Probably can't start him, but taking it to, I know we want to get into the 49ers later, there is a clear difference when Jordan Mason, as well as he's done, to Christian McCaffrey, who he was the offensive player of the year last year. Probably an MVP.
Yeah, and then
candidate.
He became the Madden cover, and then we see how that's going. The curse is alive and well.
But one stat.
People would not last in the hell of Bay Area sports we were raised in, bro. Cal football. 49ers.
Oh my God.
The Warriors suck now. The San Francisco Giants haven't won in forever. The A's are leaving. The Raiders left and went to Vegas. The Bay Area sports scene, go figure, is absolutely hell right now.
Yeah.
So fucked. And so, thank God there's a WNBA team coming to save us. But at the same time, it's crazy that, and we're going to talk about the 49ers later, obviously, but they've been just getting down one by one. It's like a needle in a haystack now, trying to find guys to step up and replace these men.
Yeah, it's crazy that the healthiest wide receiver on the Niners right now is the guy who was shot 2 months ago.
Yeah, the healthiest wide receiver for the 49ers got shot in the chest 2 months ago.
Yeah, that is the state of affairs right now.
I saw a fact that every single time that the 49ers draft a wide receiver in the first round, they end up not being able to play that wide receiver at some point, like in that season.
Really?
They get hurt. Yeah.
I can't remember.
It's just
the
a
last
fact of the
one,
matter.
to be honest. It's probably been a couple of years.
Yeah, that's true. So anyways, okay, but let's rewind real quick. First 8 weeks, your favorite players so far. Who are they?
Man, how could it not be the king, Derrick Henry, bro? Like, at age 30, the man continues to be an outlier, and at some point, it's just like, you just gotta appreciate that this guy is a human marvel, bro. Like, to be 247 pounds and run 21 miles per hour, like that,
and also 6'4".
He's also 6'4". He even caught a receiving touchdown yesterday. This dude
is a different center of gravity than most other people, and he just makes it work.
He just makes it work. And there was that, we were talking. I can't remember if we touched on Henry specifically, but there are a lot of conversations around older running backs moving teams. Historically, never been good, but then it's just like that allure of like a backfield of Lamar Jackson, who's the fantasy MVP so far. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Was it going to work? Theoretically it could, but just to see that in practice, that rushing attack has been so electric. And I mean, this guy is just I can't even say too. I don't have really any Derrick Henry in my fantasy teams, but watching this and appreciating greatness has just been so electric.
I mean, I have him on some of my fantasy teams, and
you're probably winning, huh?
I am. That's the nice part. The other nice part is on that same team, I also happen to have Lamar Jackson as my quarterback, which I originally thought I really messed this one up. This is not a good idea, Jesse. You never draft the same quarterback and running back on the same team.
Yeah.
They're just going to take touches from each other. Nope. The Ravens have found a way to make it work. In fact, this last weekend, I was predicted to lose in my league by like 30 points or so based on what Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson were going to do.
Yeah.
And then they played football on Monday night, and then I won by 20. And I scored the highest amount of points in the league. And that's just how it's going to go, because I think obviously the running style was, because he's not getting as many touches as he did when he was in Tennessee, right? And that's not John Harbaugh's plan for this squad. He literally on a quote said, we're not going to be making him carry the football 30 times like you saw when he was playing with the Titans. At the same time, he's getting a lot more efficient touches, and that's also because Baltimore's offensive line is way better than Tennessee's offensive line ever was, right? Also, now you always have to worry about the read option. Lamar Jackson could pretend like he's going to send it to Derrick Henry, but he could also keep it and run it. So it's the dual running back, essentially threat from the backfield, that opens up these holes for Derrick Henry that he hasn't really been seeing too much in his career. And seeing Derrick Henry finish down the field, putting someone's face in the ground will never get old. I know it doesn't show up on a fantasy stat sheet, but that's still one of the coolest things in football.
That's peak football. That's peak football, right? Like that is what you want to see on Sunday.
Yeah.
Or Monday, as yesterday was.
Who have you now, I don't want to say hate, but who have you disliked in fantasy football? Someone we were really high on that probably, besides obviously us saying, sleeper pick, late rounds, you should take Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. We're in, this is a funny aside from, I'm in this league with the boys. And Carson White is in this league.
Yeah.
And so we're about to draft, right? Draft is literally like 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's an hour away, but draft is coming up. I get this Venmo for someone sends me 1 cent. It's Carson's girlfriend, Haley. And the message is, SOS, I'm on a remote island and my phone is dead. I need to phone in my picks through you.
That's a real thing that happened.
That's a real thing. I'll send you a screenshot after this because I lost it, bro. It's so funny.
That's a real thing. Wow.
I was literally sending in pictures of like the players that hadn't been drafted. We did this for 16 rounds. Last pick comes up, bro. Like I put in so many picks for him. Last pick comes up. Guys diddly, not answering the phone. It's the last one. We've been sitting here, and we all mutually, as a league, agree to give him Deshaun Watson, even though that was a third quarterback on his team. We give him Deshaun Watson. Seconds later, he texts me, "I want Bucky Irving." would have been a great call, right? So
Yeah,
every
absolutely.
weekend, Carson still is like, yo, I think I need some reparations for that Bucky Irving flub. And I'm like, mate, I need reparations for your first 15 picks there.
That's awesome. So, yeah, anyways, Deshaun Watson, unfortunately, out for the rest of the season. One of the many guys we'll talk about from this last week who got injured and is out for a while. But
so to answer your question, I'm going to cheat.
Yes.
And I'm just going to say, man, injuries. I'm going to say more specifically wide receiver injuries. And this goes back to what, we started with the hypothesis of wide receiver over running back is predicated on running backs are more volatile and prone to injury. The average running back misses 3 games a season. We have seen the exact opposite where wide receivers have been decimated. And to make the matters the worst they've ever been, all the value picks at wide receiver have been hit hard. Just yesterday, we lost Chris Godwin, who was shaping up to be a league winner at his price tag. Nico Collins has been on IR after having a breakout on his breakout campaign and ascending to really a top 5 receiver in the league. AJ Brown, the current wide receiver 1, he's missed 3 games. Rashee Rice was a value because of that suspension threat. Rashee Rice out for the season. Rashid Shaheed later on in draft picks looking like a great value out for the season. I mean, the list just goes on and on. Cooper Kupp, again, I mean, same story. He's expected to come back now.
It's funny. In the first 2 weeks of the Cooper Kupp experience, I have him on some of my teams. The first 2 weeks of Cooper Kupp in fantasy is always, wow, no one's going to even come close to me. I'm going to destroy everyone in the league. And then it's always the next 5 weeks after that is, holy shit, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
Every single year that I draft Cooper. But that's okay because he's still one of the greatest wide receivers of all time, regardless of whether or not he's hurt, every year now or something. But I would also say that, and we can talk about Ayuk too as well for the 49ers. Deebo Samuel has pneumonia. Jawan Jennings hopefully can have a new hip soon because he's actually the best wide receiver on the 49ers, and I've been saying that for a while.
You have.
Also,
Tyreek and Waddle not
I was going to say
nerfed by Tua, I shouldn't say by Tua, but by Tua's absence,
Yes, but the thing is with wide receivers, you need a good quarterback throwing to them, which is also why, we see some players blow up in certain systems rather than others, because I would say my favorite player from fantasy football so far this season, besides Derrick Henry, it's not a wide receiver, it's not a defense, it's not a running back, it's a tight end.
Oh.
His name is Brock Bowers.
Oh, my God. What a
he was great at Georgia. He was the number 1 option for Carson Beck in their system. And a lot of people were a little bit, hesitant to take him to their fantasy squads. And even, just in general because of, what are the Raiders? What is their offense going to look like? Turns out he is their entire offense. They don't have a run game. They don't have a good defense. They can't throw the ball. They have a quarterback that's now going to go on IR after they bench the first quarterback. So now the first quarterback's back in. Gardner Minshew's going to play because Aiden O'Connell's going on IR. So everything aside, they had no constants this season besides Max Crosby being a psychopath on the outside and being a dog, and Brock Bowers is the best tight end for fantasy football in the entire NFL role.
He is. In fantasy football.
Right.
Real football, I think it is George Kittle, who does also have that claim now. And, I mean, especially in the wake of, obviously, the Ayuk injury, Deebo, Godspeed is able to return as soon as possible. But just the removing one piece from that offense opens that pie up a little further. Kittle has been one of the best tight ends in the NFL in a way that we don't always see in the fantasy score sheet, because he is just a monster at blocking, and that's why he can disappear from game to game if that's the plan. But now he should be an every week featured player in this offense, and Kittle provides that spike week kind of ceiling that really no tight end possesses anymore. Brock Bowers could reach there, but Kittle with the 49ers, I think he is going to be a game breaker down the stretch.
What's interesting also is George Kittle has the second most touchdown receptions in the entire NFL.
This year?
Fact.
Who's first?
Yeah, because if you watched him on receiver last year, He got no love from Shanahan in that offense for being a receiver. He was like, block first. You're a true Iowa grad.
Yeah.
You are coming into this system and you are blocking Kittle, and sometimes we're going to send you out for a pass. I think maybe Shanahan watched that and was like, you know what? I might have been a little harsh on Kittle.
Now they have no other option.
Reward him for how good of a blocker he is. This dude pancakes blocks defensive ends that maybe weigh 100 more pounds than him, and he loves it. He gets up and screams about it. Give my guy some touchdown throws, and I think that's what Shanahan's actually finally doing this year for him, which is showing up in fantasy as well.
Yeah. You know, when you started, I completely agree there, but before you started going down the path to tight end as the position group and then Brock Bowers, I was wondering if you could mention one of the really an unsung hero. If you have him on your team, you're probably pretty happy. Try to trade for him. Owner said no way. That's Brandon Aubrey, the kicker for the Dallas Cowboys, bro. This guy is scoring like a RB2 week in, week out. This guy
because the Cowboys suck at football.
The Cowboys suck at football, but this guy's nailing them for like 66 yards like it's nothing, bro. This guy, mate, if you were converting a successful onside kick, that should give you like 50 fantasy points. And he obviously had one this season, bro. This guy, Brandon Aubrey, is too good. I try to send a little Trey Sermon for Brandon Aubrey.
Are you serious?
Because when Jonathan Taylor was out, Trey Sermon played the first game, got 15 points. I was like, can I pull a fast one right now? Did not get Aubrey.
Well, that makes sense. Any wide receivers that you really liked in this first half of the season?
I mean, honestly, bro, I've been a Nico Collins truther for the longest time. It's like, now it's not even like, it's not hip to say, like everyone's saying it, but this guy is genuinely a top 5 receiver in the league. And I mean, it's Justin Jefferson at 1. Take your pick of the next.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. Justin Jefferson is the best, is one of the best players.
I mean, forever and I mean, that's why he got paid the biggest contract ever. I will say Jamar Chase has also been fantastic this year, and after this season, he's probably most likely going to get paid the second most all-time of a receiver.
That was an interesting – I can't remember which point we were at, if he had come back to practice yet when we did our first podcast. And he had a bit of a slow start that the whole Bengals offense did, but he's been clicking. It's always that big play threat. I actually – now that I think about it, I do remember one take – that I specifically was wrong on. I think you had proposed the bull case. I was a bear. That's on Malik Neighbors. I was a little skeptical that he could return. I mean, he's kind of going at a value still, but could return like difference-making upside. And I mean, this guy is he's so good.
He's amazing at football.
He is amazing at football, though. Now, I mean, missed 2 games through concussion. Back to the whole I'm not a fan of these injuries. Came back, and then I think Daniel Jones got sacked 8 times against the Eagles. Now I'm missing Andrew Thomas, their left tackle, for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So that is something to worry about down the stretch. It's not even like the Eagles are one of the best defenses, though they have Jalen Carter and some other names there in the pass rush. But I have to take my hat off and say, I was definitely wrong on Malik Neighbors. I'm extremely jealous of people who did draft it.
Malik Neighbors is the guy. And you know what's interesting is another person that I haven't been too high on. And you know what's funny is we talked about, there's, in essence, 3 great wide receivers that are coming out of this last year's draft. Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze.
Yeah.
Rome Odunze, been relatively solid, not the biggest, but we didn't really expect too much fantasy value from him because of DJ Moore and because of
Keenan Allen.
Yeah. Go Bears, baby. So we didn't really expect too much from Rome Odunze. With Malik Neighbors, he was going into this system, and we really had no idea if he was going to be that wide receiver 1. Obviously, they had other wide receivers in the past there and whatnot, and Daniel Jones needed the help. And like I said, all Malik Neighbors has done in that preseason, he just torched people. Yeah. He was by far and large one of the best wide receivers in all of the preseason. So that's why I was like, you know what? This dude, if he's showing up like he is in the preseason where he's just torching guys, it wasn't even close. He was getting, heads of separation in front of people. Awesome. So, but Marvin Harrison Jr. really has not shown up to the party. He was the consensus best wide receiver coming out of the draft. Rahul, do you see the difference in, based on actual gameplay versus fantasy, why he's not as good fantasy-wise, but he's still a great wide receiver in the NFL?
Yeah, I actually do see, I think there is a clear reason so far. And there's a clear reason that I'll get into. We do have to, Marvin Harrison is not blameless. I have seen, even yesterday, he had a pretty bad drop that the refs then kind of cheesed it and gave it, pass interference anyway. I don't think that was the case. Essentially, that, Cardinals went on to win the game from there. They also had a little cut up of him, not giving his full effort in routes and blocking. And so there is some part that he has to improve. But I think the biggest difference with Marvin Harrison, the reason for his lack of success, and especially when you contrast that to Malik Neighbors, even to like a Brian Thomas Jr. who has been electric, Marvin Harrison is just not getting those like gimme looks. They're not willing. They put him in the slot, have him run a route against no one, but they won't even give him the ball. Instead, they have him doing like, and what we expect him to eventually reach, like true like X receiver, like sprints down the sideline, winning contested catches. But that's not the easiest thing. Contested catches are called contested catches for a reason. They're 50-50 balls, and you're playing in the NFL now, rookie. I think they just have to make it a little bit easier, get a little bit more of focus, like get him those like 7 to 12 yard completions, build him up into a rhythm, and then unleash him. Once like the short passing game has been established, then you can unleash him. I think there's a lot more to come for Marvin Harrison Jr. as he gets better, but I do think we need to see a little bit of a change in the Cardinals' approach to how they use him as well.
Okay. Let's get into everything we saw last week now and how that affects everything going forward. So hopefully everyone survived Week 7's injury spree, which obviously ended yesterday with the Buccaneers wide receiver Chris Godwin, who was actually the highest scoring receiver entering the week. He suffered an ankle injury that is probably going to cost him as his season. So you also, if you had Brandon Ayuk, who now tore his ACL, suffered a knee-ending injury, he's going to be out for the season. We're going to need people to fall back on. And with fantasy football, obviously, Rahul, correct me if I'm wrong, if they're still available, which I made sure in all my leagues, one of them is not available because I drafted him like a couple weeks ago because I had a feeling something was going to happen with this 49ers wide receiver crew.
Yeah.
I have either Ricky Pearsall on my squads or Jawan Jennings. That's what you should do if you lose Ayuk, correct?
Absolutely. It's very hard to the two are very different. And honestly, Jesse, you might even have the insight as someone who watches the team a little bit more. Jawan Jennings is probably going to be the one who replaces what Ayuk does. He's going to slot into that X position, and we saw the ceiling, right? A 45-point game he hit. I think it was the 14th highest ever score by a wide receiver in fantasy football in the history of the game. So, that ceiling is one that I want to have on my team. Pearsall is a bit more of a mystery box. Obviously, he's a rookie. He injured his shoulder in camp and then got shot. He's missed a lot of training time, especially with Brock Purdy. And he profiled coming out of college as more of a slot-only player. The 49ers have historically have used 11 personnel or 3 wide receivers at close to league low rates. Shanahan treat. It's literally Shanahan. It's a huge emphasis on the run game there to make sure you get those big guys. So the slot receiver is probably not going to be as utilized. You'd expect eventually it comes down to Debo and Jawan Jennings at running the most routes. But depending on if both are available, I probably want to prioritize Jawan Jennings as kind of maybe backwards as that might seem, despite the rookie as usually the guy we get excited about. I do want to make a point of getting one of these two on my teams if they're available.
Yeah, so for me, I've been saying Jawan Jennings is the best wide receiver the 49ers have for the last 2 years. No one listened to me because obviously Debo is the most flashy player in the NFL because he's a running back that plays wide receiver. And he can also block. George Kittle's amazing at everything he does in football. Brandon Ayuk was a freak of nature last year with every single one of his catches either being for a first down or for a touchdown. Mm-hmm. But I think we got to see everyone's true colors this year because everyone's a little more battle-tested. And you also have to think, Juwan Jennings came in as a 7th-round pick. Brock Purdy came in as a 7th-round pick. These two guys played each other and played with each other on the third team when they first got into the 49ers. They developed way early together on the 49ers. So I would say that if you have someone to prioritize, Juwan Jennings has actually been playing with Brock Purdy on this squad the longest, which is why Brock Purdy trusts him. Which is a side note to also say that Juwan Jennings has the best hands of any wide receiver in the entire NFL. This man has practiced the tip drill, I would say, an exorbitant amount of times to where if Brock Purdy throws it in his general direction, even if he knows he's going to take a Goliath hit, he's still going to catch the football for a first down, go down.
Very tough.
He's a big dude, too.
Yeah, big dude.
And one thing you and I have talked about in the past is the wide receivers at the end of every single game, they give out like a game ball to the unsung hero. And Juwan Jennings wins it every single week because his job normally in a regular week is to wrestle guys over into the sideline into Gatorade jugs. That's what he does. And now he's getting a chance to actually show how good of a wide receiver he is. And obviously, I've been saying it for a while because every single time in the last 2 years that Brock Purdy has needed to make a throw, it has been to Juwan Jennings for the first down every time. Like, it was on those second and longs where he would throw it to Ayuk or something. Right. Ayuk would scramble and everything. But it was third down, maybe even a fourth down, and Shanahan says, let's roll the dice and go for it. Every single time the ball went to Juwan Jennings. And I didn't think that was by chance. I kind of already knew where Juwan Jennings stood in Brock Purdy's eyes. But it's because they played together since they came into the 49ers. When you start on the getting 13 reps together, you've been playing with each other the entire time you've been on the squad.
That's a good point that I hadn't really considered. And I guess just to wrap a bow on it, just Juwan Jennings, big, like everything you said, big dude, contested catch guy, trusted in key situations. Those are probably going to be more conducive to fantasy points than the kind of work that I expect Ricky Pearsall to be getting. Now, it's also interesting because the Niners do have a Week 9 bye coming up very soon. We don't know when Debo's going to come back. We expect him, he got hospitalized with pneumonia, so it's hard to say when he's going to come back. But if all of them come back after Week 10, Pearsall after a bye, Jennings in the role, it's very hard to say, but there is some fantasy goodness to get it out of that situation. So probably not going to come out before waivers, but do go get them, and I hope if you're listening to this, I hope you got one of them.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, if you can go out and get Deebo Samuel, last year Samuel's team target share jumps to 38% with Ayuk sideline. So that's incredible. For context, Justin Jefferson leads the NFL with a 33.3% clip this year. So a 38% clip with Ayuk sideline last year, that's what Deebo was at. I'm saying I would also probably buy Deebo. Let's talk about some guys we're buying for the rest of the season based on what we're seeing. I'm going to start with both Seattle Seahawks running backs, which is interesting because Kenneth Walker is quietly having an RB2 season in points per game right now. He's at 22.3 PPR points, behind only Derrick Henry, Rahul. And obviously, he started Week 7 as questionable with an illness. He took 15 touches for 83 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm obviously not worried about Zach Charbonnet out-snapping Walker, 33-28 this week, but I am targeting Charbonnet as an insurance piece because Walker does manage to get injured a little bit. What do you think?
He gets banged up all the time. I mean, I'd love to have Kenneth Walker on my teams. Unfortunately, the price tag is going to be quite high, but if you can acquire him, do go get him. This is like a true elite RB1, and I think the biggest thing about Ken Walker, who's always been very electric on the ground, is he hadn't had that history of pass catching, even dating back to college, even in his usage at the Seahawks first couple of years. This year in the Ryan Grubb offense, they are feeding the man the ball, like on the ground, but through the air as well, and that has, pushed him beyond we always talk about, like, we're playing fantasy football, right? Like, not all touches are created equal. And for a running back, the math through people who are better at math than I am is that an RB target is worth 2.5 times of an RB rush attempt. And now that he's added that part to his game, Kenneth Walker, the upside is like limitless, really, with how explosive he also is. To your Charbonnet point, I think these are the kind of pieces that I want to add at dirt cheap to go and then win a championship. If you're like, 5-2, 6-1, you don't really need your like wide receiver like 6 on your bench. Instead, I want to stack it up with these RBs that, if given the opportunity, almost certainly through an injury to an RB ahead, they will come in straight to your lineup, and that's what you want, like, when you're trying to win games, when you're trying to win championship. Charbonnet, perfect example. We've seen it already this year. I just want to toss a few more names into the fire. Some that have, seen that explosion so far would be Braylon Allen at the Jets, Ray Davis for the Bills. Both have produced when given opportunity, one through injury. Ray Davis, Braylon Allen through even that split, he's getting some done. If Breece Hall or James Cook go down, these are locked and loaded RB1s. Dameon Pierce is one. He was a fantasy darling maybe 2 years ago, but hasn't really, produced. He's firmly behind Joe Mixon. If Mixon goes down, Dameon Pierce steps into one of the best offenses in the league of the Texans, and they even traded away Cam Akers, who took, those starting jobs when Mixon was down, but Pierce was also down. These are exactly the kind of guys I want to add to my team at the end of my bench. Kimani Vidal for the Chargers is a deep take kind of name, but he's right behind J.K. Dobbins' paper mache legs right now. So go get these players onto your bench.
I also think that, if their starters were to go down, I would also look at Tyler Algier, because if Bijan Robinson ever sits,
100%.
Algier vaults into must-start territory. He's also playable in blowouts, as he took 18 carries for 105 yards and a touchdown in Week 6 against the Panthers.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like the top handcuff to stash. You obviously mentioned Ray Davis. James Cook has been very impressive this season, but Davis really earned himself a bigger role after posting 8.2 yards per carry against the Titans' stout front a week after taking 23 touches for 152 yards. I would also like to mention Colts running back Tyler Goodson. Initially the third-string runner, he's used his explosiveness to average 5.9 yards per carry with Jonathan Taylor out, and he's capitalized on Trey Sermon's ineffectiveness to vault into the primary role whenever Taylor, who is yet to practice, misses time. So add him, and you might have found your new starter in Week 8. That was one I just saw recently that I was like, you know what? He really has completely taken the role from Trey Sermon, who obviously drafted by the 49ers. And I also like Trey Benson, the Cardinals' backup running back, who is the team's third-round pick to succeed James Conner, and he's going to eat and instantly step up if their starter misses time. What do you think about those four?
Yeah, I do agree with the names up until Trey Benson, and I'll tell you why I don't rank Trey Benson like some of the names that I mentioned. I actually am not sure if Benson gets the James Conner role if he goes down, because you already see Amari DeMarcado. Yeah, exactly right. Like who?
Mm-hmm.
But he's the one he's the one taking touches after Conner. And that's more because DeMarcado is that passing downs back. He takes Conner off the field in third and long, obvious passing situations. But that's a situation where even if Conner went down, I wouldn't project Benson to actually come in and take 70%, to take 80%. Whereas Braylon Allen, Charbonnet, Ray Davis, I absolutely would. Tyler Algier, absolutely would. Tyler Goodson, interesting one. We'll have to see if Jonathan Taylor practices. That's one where it's still, I want to say Trey Sermon may have still had more touches than he did, but Goodson is just way more explosive, and he got the goal line carry this week. So that one's a little more interesting, but we've seen it in practice, and JT is injured. But that's a reason why Trey Benson, as much as the hype was coming out of college and being drafted to the Cardinals with an early third-round pick, I don't know if this is the year we'll see the best out of him in fantasy, even if Conner were to go down.
Okay, here's one guy I'm selling, and a lot of people are probably going to disagree with me on this, but I'm selling Packers running back Josh Jacobs. I think he's still valued one tier too high. Has more rushing attempts than Kyron Williams, 4 more. Jacobs has 1 rushing touchdown to Williams' 9. Why, might you ask? Because Jordan Love is the red zone option, and Jacobs is tied with Trey Sermon for 20th among players for goal-to-go rushing attempts. He's not catching enough passes, only 2.2 per game, to even make up for that margin. So for that reason, I'm selling.
Yeah, I think if you can, you mentioned Ken Walker earlier. Can you turn Josh Jacobs plus, let's say, like a wide receiver 2 into Kenneth Walker? 100% doing that deal, and I think exactly for the reasons you laid out. Now, is there a positive regression case? I think he, with those attempts to only get 1 touchdown, is pretty anomalous, but we actually also did see Josh Jacobs last year with the Raiders, completely different team, get all the touches in the world and not turn that into fantasy points. So, yeah, if you're able to get that kind of value, I would do it. Definitely not a sell low player. Josh Jacobs, the hypothesis was, will he absorb 70, 80% of the carries, all the goal line work? And that has just not played out. Even Emmanuel Wilson is kind of splitting in there. And Jordan Love is just like a savant in the red zone, right? This guy's slinging it all the time. So Josh Jacobs could be on the sell list. Do not cut your losses for cheap, though, is the only advice I'd give.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so let's say I drafted an underperforming quarterback. So Aaron Rodgers, who I did draft in one of my drafts, dropped him. Mahomes, Justin Herbert, or Richardson. I want your opinions on these 2 guys because I don't know. What should I think of Russell Wilson first off? 24.8 fantasy points in his first start last weekend, and potentially more to come with a favorable upcoming schedule. The Steelers are quietly scoring 27.5 points per game since week 3 and face a Giants defense allowing 19.8 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks.
Mate, I'm absolutely with it. Let Russ cook, mate. Let Russ cook. And it was just, I'm chronically online, right? I spent a lot of time on fantasy Twitter, and the amount of people that thought they were smarter than Mike Tomlin, you're like, how could you bench Fields? Like, just them eating like crow has been quite satisfying to watch. It's night and day. Russell Wilson operated that offense to a way that Fields never could. He took shots to Pickens that Fields would never see. I think the most impressive play, I'll have to send you the highlight if you don't remember this. There's one where the pass rush was in his face. Rush quickly swivels and drops it off to Freiermuth for a big gain. Those are the kind of places where Justin Fields takes a big sack. You're immediately at like 3rd and 22, and the drive is over. And now taking that of fantasy football, Russell Wilson quietly was a QB1 last year at the Broncos, and now with the juice of George Pickens compared to Courtland Sutton, who's a decent player but doesn't have that explosiveness, I think the ceiling is very high. They did this against the Jets defense. Though the Jets were missing a lot of key starters, they still have Sauce Gardner out there, and Russ still diced them up. There's a lot to like, and when when we're getting it to this point of the season, if you don't have Lamar Jackson, if you don't have Josh Allen, even Jalen Hurts has been disappointing. If you don't have him, if you don't have Jaden Daniels, you're probably in this kind of tier where a lot of quarterbacks are scoring similar to the starter that you have in. I wouldn't be afraid to play matchups. Get the guy who's playing. Darnold is playing the Rams this week. He plays the Jaguars in a couple weeks. That's the kind of guy I'd be jamming into my lineup ahead of Patrick Mahomes at this point of the season. The names don't matter. What matters is fantasy points and how you get them.
Is it bad that I'm now putting in some claims for Russell Wilson on a lot of waiver wires where I have Justin Fields? Like, should I drop Justin Fields now, essentially?
If it's a 1 quarterback league, it's a drop.
Yeah, 1 quarterback league.
It's a drop.
Just drop him.
It's, I think we talked about it. I never like to play with 2 quarterbacks on my team. It has to be a very special circumstance. At this point, with injuries, it's a light bye week this week, but with bye weeks, I don't really have the capacity on most teams to roster 2 quarterbacks. And especially the Fields, Russell, and Wilson one, though we know if Fields comes in, he's going to do well at fantasy football. that's also not a situation where I want to have one quarterback who's definitely not playing on my team. I'd go with one or the other.
That makes sense. Okay. Well, this is why you're the fantasy guru and not me. So, okay. Another quarterback, Bo Nix. Nix has posted 19 or more fantasy points in 3 of his past 5 games and ranks 14th in quarterback points in that span. The key to Nix's success is his rushing prowess, which we really didn't see too much at University of Oregon. Maybe Dan Lanning just didn't need it, but he's tallied 6.3 rushing points per game points since week 3, a pace that is only slightly behind Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, I mean, give you a starter for a streamer for this week. Play Bo Nix over Patrick Mahomes. Play Bo Nix over, I don't know, let me look at the top quarterbacks. I'm playing Bo Nix over Brock Purdy, for example, this week. And
Yeah.
a big part is the matchup. Bo Nix plays against the Carolina Panthers that even Marcus Mariota put 20 points up on. But I think this week Bo Nix is a great start. Ooh, man, I have to look at the matchup.
Are you thinking Bo Nix or are you thinking Russell Wilson here?
Russell Wilson. Do you have who the Steelers play off the top of your head? Let me take
the Steelers this week play.
The Giants. You just said the Giants.
Yeah, yeah.
Whew. That's honestly, I think I'm gonna go with Bo Nix just because if you have anyone on your team and you see they play the Carolina Panthers, you put them in your line.
Yeah, you probably want them.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson, though. It's like, why am I dropping Justin Fields,
happy,
you know?
Yeah. I'm happy for the guy. You know,
Yeah.
I saw a ton of Russell Wilson edits today, and then they kind of moved me.
Well, okay. Well, then, looks like we're going to draft Bo Nix or sign him off of some waivers because freaking Bo Nix, why not? He's got rushing prowess, I guess.
Mate, I would say we were kind of in the trenches in weeks 3 to 5. You know, the injuries were hitting really hard. There's a certain point, I think it's when Debo got injured for the first time, and it was like the 5th wide receiver on the same day to have a multi-week injury. Isaiah Pacheco had gone down, who was a favorite of ours. Jake Ferguson was a favorite of ours, went down. And Njoku, who now could be a league winner, but Njoku had gone down. It was just, we were definitely in the trenches. We're kind of working our way out of it. But this is the time, like, I'm 4-3 and 3-4 in like all of my leagues.
Every single one of my leagues.
Every single one. Every single one, and everyone else is also 4-3 and 3-4. No situation.
No one can get a random read on this season.
Yeah, but no situation is unrecoverable. I mean, 0-7, maybe it is. Like I always say, 8 wins is the magic number. I've seen 7-7 go through, but really, you're probably in that kind of muck between 4-3 and 2-5. Keep fighting. There are those waiver options. There's those high upside RBs to get. There's so many ways to turn this situation around.
I would agree. So, okay. If we're talking receivers real quick, so Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are going to miss time.
Yeah.
Should I add any Buccaneers wide receivers? A lot of people are saying they should go for Jalen McMillan over Sterling Shepard, given the ceiling and ability. But McMillan really hasn't done much since week 1, but he's a smart receiver who knows how to work in space, and he can get open. And a lot of people think he can be the number 1 until Evans is ready, and the number 2 after, if Godwin's injury is indeed season-ending. In deeper leagues, Shepard and Trey Palmer are worth a speculative add, but I don't know. When I watch the Buccaneers, I probably myself would take Sterling Shepard based on the amount of targets that he would get over McMillan. McMillan has obviously bigger big play ability, so it's like, what do you want? You want big play ability, or do you want just targets?
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see. I think we haven't seen McMillan play in his best role so far. McMillan came out of college as a very good slot wide receiver, which is not really that highly valued. I mean, the NFL changes year after year. These guys are going further and further up. We've seen the success of players like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Cooper Kupp. What's interesting is the Bucs coaching staff now are all Rams guys. The OC was the Rams passing game coordinator last year, Liam Cohen. Theoretically, the slot role in the Bucs offense is the moneymaker for fantasy football. That's where Chris Godwin is playing and thriving. Could Jalen McMillan step into that? The profile says yes. if I wanted to take a swing, I actually would still go with McMillan. Compared to, Sterling Shepard is like a 7+ year veteran of the NFL. I don't know what more we're gonna get from him. Jalen McMillan could step into like one of the most profitable roles in fantasy football, if you will. I do have my concerns though that this Bucs offense might just completely splinter and fall away without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin though. So it might be a little gross for a while. If I am to prioritize one, it would be Jalen McMillan.
Okay, and some recent news also that came out today. Well, two more recent pieces of news is that the Lions wide receiver Jameson Williams is expected to be suspended 2 games.
Another one of those great value picks out for 2 games.
I know. So both Khalif Raymond, who had 3 catches for 39 yards, and Tim Patrick, 2 catches for 25, should see increased usage. But I think the biggest beneficiary might be Sam Laporta, I think.
Yeah.
Because Williams' breakout campaign has come at the cost of the sophomore tight end's production, as Laporta is averaging 2.3 catches and 37.3 yards per game with just 1 touchdown in 2024. And if Williams is sidelined, Laporta should return to the 3rd receiving option behind the Sun God and Jahmyr Gibbs.
I completely agree. I mean, Sam Laporta quietly been one of the busts of the season, considering where he was going in drafts. Not as much of a bust as like Brandon Ayuk, for example, even without the injury, because the point scoring difference is not that steep at tight end in 2024. But you'd have to think the increase does come for Laporta in this situation.
Okay. I think, with first off, Amon-Ra St. Brown quietly is top 3 wide receiver in the NFL.
He's just doing his thing. That's it.
He's
year in, year out.
Yeah. He's so awesome. So another piece of news that just came out is Cooper Kupp is aware of trade rumors ahead of his expected return, but is focused on, quote, being the best LA Ram that he can be. If Cooper Kupp gets traded to another team, what should we expect?
Man, Cooper Kupp playing with McVay and Stafford, the kind of mind meld that Stafford and Kupp have had, those rumors of the Breakfast Club, right? They have breakfast and go over film. You're not going to get that anywhere else. For fantasy football, I want Cooper Kupp to stay at the LA Rams, but could we see him in like a Chiefs jersey? Could we see him, maybe not the Lions, because they probably need more of a big guy, but Vikings was, I think, someone that was discussed today. There are a lot of options. Unfortunately, I do think most of them would be a downgrade on his fantasy football status. I am going to this Thursday game, Vikings versus Rams, and I do hope Cooper Kupp plays, so I actually kind of hope the trade rumors are not true, or at least delayed by a week, because I want to see the man return.
Me too. Okay, so the final thing I really want to get into here, let's make sense of this whole Tua Tagovailoa situation, because a lot of people are saying you should add Tua to your fantasy team, not even thinking about wide receivers or anything. But from what I'm hearing, from what you're hearing, Tua is expected to practice this week, and as long as there are no setbacks, I'm hearing Tua will start against the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday. I was told that he has not had any lingering issues after being diagnosed with a concussion for the 3rd time in 2 years. So help me make sense of this rule. What should we think about the Dolphins up to this point and going forward?
Well, to first address Tua coming back, all the news does point to him. If not week 8, definitely by week 9. His return is imminent. You hear Tua talk about it. He is very firm on wanting to continue playing, and that is a respectable decision. You even take the money out of it, because he would only really be entitled to that contract if he wasn't medically cleared. He was medically cleared, so he has to play to get the money. You take that out of it, and this is still like a champion level athlete at every level of the game, to go in to win the most dramatic natty win with Alabama, right? Step away from that is very difficult, even as what one would hope is the objective outsider. Man, you have a family. Think of yourself. Put all that to the side. Tua when he comes back, I do expect boosts back to where we kind of drafted these guys at for Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Devon Achane, who I've been very disappointed because after 2 weeks, I was like, this is the best pick I've made to take him like early in the second round, where ADP was like, no, take him in like the fourth round. I was like, no, call my shot. Devon Achane is going to be that guy. I'm very excited to see all of the Dolphins hopefully return to their best. And I do expect that. I think, having seen what we've seen from the combination of Skylar Thompson, Tim Boyle, and Tyler Huntley, got to put some respect on Tua's name. He's not just like a system merchant. This guy was making this offense tick.
Yeah, and that's what I think a lot of people have now realized is that offense was for Tua. Mike McDaniel makes that offense to go around Tua. It's not anything else. You can't just plug and play another quarterback in there. And I also think that when Tua comes back, I expect wide receiver production for everyone, especially Tyreek Hill, to go way back up, because the one thing that Tua does well with Tyreek Hill is he gets the ball to Tyreek Hill in open space, which is not what Tyler Huntley or any of the other two quarterbacks you mentioned have been able to do with Tyreek Hill. And Tyreek Hill operates when he has space, because what is he? He's not very big. He's extremely fast. You have to get Tyreek Hill in open space and throw him to open space.
You have to, but I think I have been shocked by simply how bad they have been. I mean, you just look against the Colts, who are one of the worst defenses in the entire NFL. For Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to get a combined 2 catches, I think some questions have to be asked of Mike McDaniels, who's you're really a fun guy to root for. I mean, not just because of his demeanor, but he also has a long story, very honest about his battles with alcoholism and his impact on him and how he's worked from that. Someone I want to root for. Then the whole offense is so fun, but the fact that he couldn't do more. When you see Vikings, now they're 5-1, but see what they've done with Sam Darnold. You've seen what even the Colts did with Flacco, the Browns did with Flacco. There's so many more examples, which I'd expect more. But fret not. Looks like Tua will be returning, and I hope our Dolphins will be back to what we expected them to be when we drafted them.
Yeah, I definitely think Tua being in just there, he's a gunslinger. That's what they're going to do. They're going to throw the ball a lot, and that's really what Mike McDaniel wants to do, and that's what Tua's going to want to do. Hopefully he doesn't run as much anymore after now this 4th time having a concussion.
Mate, but also just the NFL is very scripted because, I mean, it's not like this guy delivered the hit on him. It's kind of Tua ran into him with his head, but of course it was Damar Hamlin there at the other end of that exchange.
Who Tua literally went into Damar Hamlin's chest.
Yeah.
A guy who literally last year was dead on the field because his heart stopped. And Tua runs into that guy, and Tua went down.
How does this happen, bro? How is this not scripted? How is this not the greatest
everything
television
is a simulation
show we've
at this
ever
point.
seen? Yeah.
Everything is a simulation at this point.
Jesse, I do have a question for you. I know this is kind of reverse. This is the sports scene with Rahul Natarajan. Only because I remember one of our sleepers that we talked about, and I think has been a hit so far. I expect more out of him. What have you seen from Rico Dowdle at the Cowboys, and what do you expect down the stretch now from him?
Okay. So, obviously, when we were picking
sleepers,
running backs at the beginning of the season, when we were picking running backs at the beginning of the season, right? We both assumed that whoever, if you could choose Rico Dowdle, or you could also choose Ezekiel Elliott for the Dallas Cowboys, and you would have been totally fine, right? Because they didn't really have a clear-cut, running back, but they've just been a mess for much of this season so far. So one thing the coaching staff really has been preaching is that they need to get Rico Dowdle more touches moving forward.
Going into the bye, they said that.
Exactly. So coming off of a bye, this would be perfect for them to follow up those words with some action, because who are you going against? the San Francisco 49ers. And the 49ers just made Kareem Hunt look like he was the same player from his first time in Kansas City.
Yeah.
So if Dowdle gets the opportunities, I really think he could put up running back 2 performance numbers as long as that offensive line holds up. Obviously, they've had some trouble with the offensive line, but, I mean, more touches means more yards for him.
Yeah.
For a San Francisco 49ers defensive line that has proven that they cannot stop the run, Rico Dowdle should be absolutely dominating the touches in this game and get the ball out of Dak Prescott's hands. If I'm Mike McCarthy and I want to keep my job after this year, which ironically he probably will because Jerry Jones.
That's just what Cowboys do.
Just because Jerry Jones.
Yeah.
But Mike McCarthy, by and large, should have been fired a long time ago. But if he has any sort of sense, you give Rico Dowdle the lion's share of the rushes going forward because Ezekiel Elliott's not the player he once was. And so up until this point, I think Rico Dowdle has been underused, and in the situations where he has been used, he's been actually salvageable fantasy-wise.
Mm-hmm.
He's been not bad, but I think going forward, if you give him more touches, he could be excellent within a top 10 running back in the entire NFL.
My read has been the exact same. I think you can be encouraged by what you've seen without being like, damn, this has been like the smash league winner that we hope, he can be. We see the vision. Dallas Cowboys just needed to like stop going down by like 40, right? Like they went down by like 40 to the Saints, to the
Cowboys football, baby. That's what we do.
It's crazy because all at home, like the last like 4 home games is like playoff blowout Packers, blown out by the Saints, blown out by the Ravens. They kind of came back at the end of the game, but blown out essentially.
Yeah,
blown out by the Lions, who were like hook and laddering to the offensive tackle. They got
that is the most disrespectful thing I've ever seen. And kudos to Dan Campbell, who obviously was a little bit salty about having that one offensive lineman last year who went in and declared to the ref. Obviously, the ref forgot that he declared. Yeah. They threw the flag, and then everything went to hell from there. But he obviously, Coach Campbell, has been holding on to this for a while, and so it's been absolutely awesome to kind of just see him just go right at the Cowboys and say, "Hey,
so funny." Even the play where Jared Goff kneeled to end the game, they went and had Dan Skinner go in and report as eligible as a final
the amount of pettiness that Dan Campbell now has for the NFL and also against the Cowboys as well is just hilarious to me. And I think if you're going to have linemen running in for touchdowns on multiple attempts too. One got called back, by the way.
Yeah.
If you're going to do that multiple times against your team, your team sucks.
Yeah.
You are bad. If they're going to run multiple offensive linemen who are eligible for passes, you're going to just keep throwing it to them, your team is ass and you need to start over.
It's like, why not, you're up 30. Why not save your trick plays for another day? Why put them on film? No.
Yeah.
Let me be petty and make my point right here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in the grand scheme of everything, Rico Dowdle, he's going to be fine. I hope the Cowboys script, makes them get him a few more carries. I would say that his usage in week 4 and 5, I think he was close to, like almost 70% rush share.
Yeah.
That's what you need to get him back to if you want to win. And that was one of those weeks the Cowboys actually got to win. So other than that, they're horrible. Anything else we should talk about here, Rahul? Before we wrap up this show, what else? What are your final thoughts for me about fantasy?
Man,
you're the guru.
It has been a crazy one. I mean, we love this game, right? As much pain as it causes us, we love this game. I've really just been enjoying watching the narratives, the storylines. Yeah. I've enjoyed being wrong. It kind of it's a humbling experience in a way.
As opposed to last year when we were wrong about everything. So at least this year we have some wins. So it's nice to be wrong about some things.
Yeah.
Whereas last year we were wrong about everything. So everything just felt horrible.
We were wrong about everything. And somehow, I gave one advice to the crowd. I didn't take it myself. And I still drafted some great teams last year. Now I'm a bit, kind of in the shitter. through bad choices, through a lot of horrible injury luck that everyone's suffering from, through drafting tight end early. I think one of my biggest follies, again, something that I didn't follow myself. I was like, no, skip on early tight end, and I still went and drafted Mark Andrews and Dalton Kincaid in my main league.
Yeah.
So it's just been crazy, but this is the kind of stuff that I love. I just love, I love the game of football, but I also just love the discourse, the numbers, just seeing what you see, in a table come to fruition on the field, seeing those fantasy points rack up. Jesse, I've just been having so much fun, and I hope long may it continue.
Me too. This was fun, Rahul. What are you up to now? Where can we find you? Are you going to be doing any going for two stuff? I know you're busy with work and whatnot, but is there any way we can find your fantasy expertise?
Always. The closest place to stay connected to me is on Twitter at SmallTalkFF. Unfortunately, I had to tone down the podcast stuff a little bit. I was doing the fantasy assessment as my podcast. We were on a weekly cadence, and unfortunately, I was getting my ass kicked a little too much with the work, so it's on hiatus. But follow me on Twitter. That's where I'm always talking fantasy. If you ever have any questions, feel free to tag me or get at me in the DMs. But yeah, Twitter's probably the best place to find me.
Boom. Rahul, this was so much fun. Thanks for stopping by the sports scene, as always. What is it, week 8?
We're going into week 8, yeah.
Okay, we're going into week 8. So what if we talk before week 12?
Week 12? I'm thinking either week 12 or right before week 15 when the playoffs.
Right before the playoffs?
Yeah. But 12, there could be some good content gearing up. So I'll keep both of those weeks open, Jesse. I'm always
by then, you would hope that a lot of these guys who are on the IR maybe are off, and then we can start talking about guys like Nico Collins and whatnot, and maybe Jonathan Brooks will ever play football again. That'd be pretty sweet. I would love to see him in the Panther system.
I think he's near. I don't think it's this is the week, but I think Jonathan Brooks will be back by week 9. I'm very excited to see him.
Bold take.
Yeah.
I hope you're right. You traded me for him in one of our leagues, and now I'm reaping the benefits from him because Jerome Ford, you need to drop. Jerome Ford, you need to drop. As Nick Chubb is back, baby. So, remember, friends and family and people out there, if you can fleece your friends, do it every time. It always works.
And if you're a so-called fantasy guru, remember to stay humble.
100%. Hey, Rahul, thank you so much for popping by the sports scene, brother. And thank you all for tuning into the sports scene on iHeartRadio, podcast, and YouTube. If you want a little more sports madness in your life, well, tune back in the future, and we'll be back with a lot more episodes here. Until then, stay happy, stay healthy, and we'll see you right back here on the sports scene with Jesse Ough, presented by First Bet and Sports Fluent Media.